And with that, I think I'm going to start. I'm going to introduce the filmmaker who has put together this video about the Weymouth compressor history and actually the community's history prior to the construction of the Weymouth compressor. Her name is Carolyn Shadid Lewis. And she has done a nice piece of work, and she's going to explain a little bit how it's a work in progress and how to do what she's going to show tonight. And then we'll see that for about almost a half an hour. And after that, we'll have our panel. Now,
thank you all for coming. I'm excited to share this with you. As Dick said, this is a work in progress, so we'll just manage expectations a little bit with that. We've been working on this for a while. There's a team of us. Sue Murad, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, started with documenting the health stories of residents who've been suffering from cancer from the toxic legacy of the Fore River Basin, and that's what we started with, and I came in as an editor. And now we have a few others who've joined us. Bob Gifford here, who's been... And then Robert and Yvonne Lamothe, who are right here. They've been documenting this story on the ground for quite a while, and they have their own documentary coming out soon called South Shore People Power, which sounds great, and I can't wait to see it. And they very generously donated some of their footage from their time documenting what's happening on the ground. And we're very thankful for that. And so I just want to give you an idea of what you're going to be seeing. It's two phases of what's been going on with the compressor. As I mentioned, it was the first phase before the compressor started, the construction started with the compressor, and that was focusing on the health stories. And then the second, sorry, you're better now. Okay. And the second phase, now that we're in, which the compressor is being built. And they are two different feels to the film. This is almost like two different films, really, that you're going to be seeing. And these are very short excerpts of a much larger story, and there's much that we couldn't get into this edit. One glaring omission is Alice Arena is not in this film, who is obviously a big champion of this and a big part of the story. She will obviously be in what we hope is a much bigger film, and that we can document all the work and labor that has gone in opposing this. The only other thing I want to mention that was very compelling as a filmmaker to go back and look at this earlier footage is that we had footage of what seemed like pristine land that is now being dug up, and so very eerie to go back and look at that footage. And what was also so strange to have gone through all this is to know that what's underneath that seemingly pristine land was just layers of toxic history, basically our industrial history. That's just layer upon layer of that. And then to see that dug up was very eerie. So that's just some observations. So what you're seeing now are basically those two excerpts of a much larger story that we hope to someday be able to tell, but not now. Thank you.
thanks. Carolyn said she was just going to take a minute. I think that was more like 5, but that's fine. I think we needed that context. So Bob, roll it.
Well, we're waiting for the lights. Is that too dark? Is that all right? Nope.
So as we say, that's a work in progress, and it's Carrie. Right. If it's all right with you, Carrie, what we'd like to do is have the panel start with Regina, and then you and Nathan can speak. Okay, so we're going to firsthand. What we're going to do now is have 3 speakers. all of whom are members of sponsoring organizations of this event. FRRACS, the Fore River Group, Greater Boston Physicians for Social Responsibility. Nathan is in lots of different groups, Sierra Club, and as you saw, he's also participating as doing civil disobedience at the site. I'm a member of 350 Mass, the Boston Node, which meets here, and also Boston Climate Action Network. And there are some other organizations who I know are represented here in the audience. But what we'd like to do is ask first Regina Rocque to speak. Regina is a physician at Mass General Hospital. Her specialty is infectious disease. And I know there's going to be a lot of interest in coronavirus, but I've asked her to talk about the Fore River construction of the compressor site. And then next we'll have Alice Arena, who is the executive director of Fore River Residents Against the Compressor Station. And then we'll finish with both Nathan and Karen. And then after that, we'll have questions and answers. So with that, I'll just hand the microphone to Regina. Stand up here or sit at the desk. Sit at the table.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for such a nice introduction. I'm actually humbled because I don't think I should be speaking first, but I also want to acknowledge that in the room are a number of people from Greater Boston. I guess I'll just say that my 2+ years of learning about this struggle with the Weymouth compressor station has been an incredibly humbling experience for me. As a physician and a scientist, I've somehow come to think that facts matter and that facts prevail and that we strive towards public health. But I think I have come to see that we really have a hierarchy of audibility and credibility where the facts can be readily pushed out of the room if they're being put forward by people who lack power. And I think that this movie is incredible because it brings the facts forward in a personal and engaging way. And what is presented here are the facts. There are elevated levels of cancer in these areas. There are elevated levels of respiratory disease and children and adults, and we don't know why. And it is entirely plausible that it relates to the toxic legacy that's described. And our health infrastructure, our environmental protection infrastructure has failed all of us because there are questions here that require urgent exploration to understand, and we have not done it. And so I think that the voices of everybody here needs to be raised up. And unfortunately, the voices of science and physicians really haven't made a lick of difference. So I think I want to defer to my colleagues here who really brought the attention that this issue needs. So I'll leave it at that.
I should say, Regina's, she is being too modest. She wrote an article with a co-author who is here in the room for the New England Journal of Medicine, highlighting this issue of climate change and fossil fuel industry's role in what we're now facing as this calamitous, some say existential threat. And so Regina has been bringing that to, what we think around here anyway is one of the leading medical journals in the world to the audience that reads that. So I commend her for doing that, even though she's saying she doesn't belong up here. I think she does. I want to say just a minute before we go on about the gas that goes through this compressor station. Maybe I'll say two things. First is, in addition to what Regina said about we've seen, there is a cancer cluster here. And I used to be the clap, by the way, those who don't know me. I used to be the director of the Massachusetts Cancer Registry, and Quincy and Weymouth were part of the surveillance that we did. And there was, even in the 80s, very high rates of lung cancer in Quincy and extraordinarily high rates of mesothelioma, that's a cancer for which we do know the cause. And it was in Weymouth, and it was undoubtedly because of either work in the shipyard, the General Dynamics shipyard that was in the video, or being downwind of the shipyard where you were exposed to asbestos in either way. And that exposure causes mesothelioma, and there was an excess, statistically significant, all of that, in Weymouth, along with the excess of lung cancer in Quincy. And then Regina was also the lead author of a critique of a health impact assessment, which Greater Boston PSR did. The critique was of a document that had been produced by an organization basically hired by the state that wound up saying, well, there doesn't seem to be any health problem here. And so one of the pieces of the critique was, oh yes, there is. In fact, there's existing health data that shows these are communities that are adversely affected already from the history that was shown in the video. And in particular, 2 census tracts that are called environmental justice census tracts. They're both in Quincy, right across the Fore River, Quincy Point and Germantown. And those had an even higher rate of lung cancer than the rest of the area, the rest of Quincy. And so there is, very strong evidence of an ongoing impact on this community. That's one of the reasons why Physicians for Social Responsibility is trying to point out the health impacts of yet another source of environmental pollution, air pollution in particular. So anyway, that was sort of my addition, I guess, to what. So now I'd like to ask Nathan Phillips, who is, as I said, a professor at Boston University, maybe I didn't say that, but professor of in the Earth and Environment Department, and Carrie Labrador, who is representing the Micmac Nation, to say a few words.
Thank you. So it's very meaningful for me to be in this space right now because I was just looking back at my timeline and my email and looking at dates, and it was March 27th, 2018, almost 2 years ago, when I was in this same room and we were wrapping up the necessity defense trial that we had had for the West Roxbury lateral pipeline. That was because of a sustained campaign of nonviolent civil disobedience, and it was on August 18th, 2016, prior to that I did the first act of civil disobedience for myself because I was compelled after what I saw happening in West Roxbury with that high pressure pipeline being rammed down a community, the injustice that I saw there. And so to be back here in this same space, standing and fighting against the same corporation, trying to inflict another injustice is deeply meaningful. People in this very room, John, where are you? People that fought so hard, people who aren't here with us this evening, Mary Boyle, Nancy Wilson, so many others that actually have now come to and are doing standouts on the Fore River Bridge and building that solidarity. And it's just been amazing to me how these struggles, which are all connected from the fracking fields in Pennsylvania through New York and into Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, into Nova Scotia. They're all connected, and they then build our own networks of resistance. And so I still remember that that's where I met Carrie Labrador, because she put her body on the line in West Roxbury. She jumped into the trench. And in the debrief, after, it was somewhere in JP at the Policy Institute.
Yeah.
Chuck's place.
Right, Chuck's place.
And I heard Carrie for the first time speak about why she did what she did in that battle, and it just blew me away. And then for her to have then done the research in Weymouth and to connect some dots that many of us were not seeing about what's happening to the water protectors and the land protectors in Alton was an incredible enlightening, and we're just so deeply grateful for you stepping up yet again and coming into the aid. And with that, I'd just like to turn it over to you, Carrie.
don't mind if I kind of kneel back here, walked here. As I was sitting here watching this, it brought back a lot because in this video, I grew up in Germantown. I went to Snug Harbor until I was in the 3rd grade. From there, I moved up to Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia. I didn't know all these years later that my connections between Germantown and Indian Brook would have such an impact on my life, and maybe it was the lesson that I needed in my life, because after finding all this out, I knew what was going on in Weymouth. I'd been following that, I knew what was going on, but having the ties that I do have to Indian Brook, which is the reservation that I come from, I've been watching them fight oil and gas as well for just as long. And that's what made me just dive into this research. I've grown up on the East Coast. I've never been anywhere other than here. The furthest south I've been is Queens, New York. Furthest west I've been is Niagara Falls, Ontario. That's it. This is all I know. So when I seen all of this that was going on, and after Standing Rock kicked off, I had a duty. Not just for you guys that are living in these places, but for my people, for my ancestors. When Nathan talks about what I did when I jumped in the trench, I simply went to protest. I went to hold a sign, yell at some people, and call it a day. When I got there, I saw what was happening. And my ancestors just said, jump, get in there. So I jumped and I got in there. And I kept that fight within me right up until this point today. And when I see these stories that I just saw, it's that reason right there that I will put my body on the line again to make a difference and to make some noise, because these families should not be burying anybody. They should not be saying bye to their kids. And knowing that these are lands that I grew up on. I grew up in these same areas. And from that point on, that's when I took it upon myself. You know, I'm not connected to just one activist group here, there. I'm all over the place. Because to be a thorn in this side, it's more. It's more than just being a thorn in their side. I have children. I have 3 of them. I have nieces and I have nephews. And I know plenty here are probably grandparents and have their own children, and they're watching everybody grow up. We have a duty to these kids out here today. They don't have proper leaders. We know this. We see what they're doing right now. These are people that are supposed to be leading us the proper way. And all they're doing is leading us straight into destruction. They're carrying us down a path. I refuse to walk down that path. I'm not walking down that path no more. I refuse to be something in a world of just greed and that's feeding this ugly fossil fuel industry. So knowing that my people were up in Canada fighting, and I'm in no position to drive 16 hours away because that's how long it takes to get up there. I'm in no position to hop in and go 16 hours away. So once I figured everything out that was going on down here, this is where my stand now. This is where it's at now. And I'm gonna just keep on fighting, because if we don't, they win. Right. I refuse to let any of these people win because of these kids that are out here. I say this time and time again. These kids deserve that future that they were promised by us. They deserve that. And I refuse to go down quietly. I sit here and I look at this reservation where I grew up on. It's not a good reservation. It's poor. It's your typical reservation. It's poor. There's poor natives. There's corruption. There's alcoholism. There's drug abuse. We have it all up there too. On top of that, this same place is home to one of the worst Indian residential schools during that era. My mother came from that era. I'm the daughter of an Indian residential school survivor. My mother fought and fought and fought to get out of that place. She took beatings, horrific beatings, and so much more that has gone on in that place. And to sit here and try to drill and get rid of this brine in these waters? No. My ancestors are backing me, I know that. As long as my ancestors are backing me, I got all the strength in the world to back all of you in your fight against this bullshit.
Well, that is a hard act to follow. I'm going to ask Alice Arena, the executive director of FRRACS, to say a few words about her life and her struggle.
So, just a couple of things. I'm sure most of you have heard about the compressor station in Weymouth, and I like to say, for more information, go to knowcompressor.com if you want to read about the whole story. So if you go to the news drop down and you go all the way back to 2015, it's literally a 5-year history of everything that we've been through to come to, unfortunately, where we are today, where they are constructing. I would also like to let you know that we will be having, and this is going to sound nuts, our 5-year anniversary celebration will be next Tuesday at the Fore River Club in Quincy. We'll share a meal and cake, and we'll invite all the politicians and have everybody come down, so everyone is welcome to join us. So, this isn't about me. This is about the people in this film. It's about the people who have lived in the basin, who have lived in Germantown, who have lived in Quincy Point, like Judy, who have grown up in this area. And it's kind of crazy. You look at the landscapes that Carolyn and Susan have done, and you look at it and you say, wow, that looks really pretty. It's this sort of typical New England coast, and then they flash to the industrial stuff that's down there. And the people that have lived there for all these years, for generations and generations, have been abused. They've been abused by the powers that be, the powers like Spectra, Enbridge, Procter & Gamble, Edgar Power Plant, General Dynamics Shipping. I was not stunned, but when Dick mentioned the mesothelioma in the area, it wasn't just General Dynamics, but the Edgar coal-fired plant was loaded with asbestos. So, how long can you take this? How long can this go on? So we had this one spit of land that 5 years ago, Spectra waltzed into town, sat down with Mayor Susan Kay and Councilor Rebecca Haw and said, we just want to put up a little garden shed. It's a little garden shed. Don't worry about it. They literally said that. And then a friend of mine sent me an email and said, you know what they're doing in Weymouth? I said, I have no idea, Doug. And he sent me the information and I looked at it and I said, no way. No way. My sister-in-law lives within, and her family live within a half-mile notification zone. I have many friends in that area. The notification zone means when there's an accident, you literally have 60 seconds to get out. 60 seconds. So we went forward and I just started, the mayor was a friend of mine, I gave her the information, I talked to Becky Haw, I said, you know what, this is just a bad idea. And people started looking into it and realized that it was a really bad idea. Now, my friends in the rural areas, and I come from northern Maine, get mad at me when I say this, but you have to know that the reason that the industry puts these compressor stations on 100 acres of land in the middle of nowhere is because they blow up. It is because if the compressor doesn't blow up, the vibration and the heat backing up on the pipelines blow up the pipelines. So if they're out in the middle of nowhere, right? Well, it's still really bad. Environmentally, it's disastrous. But you're probably going to wipe out maybe one farmhouse and a cow if you're lucky. If you're in Weymouth, where the populations are, I just did an analysis of this because one of the lies that Spectre put in their application was that it was rural. And to God. So I started looking at the populations of Quincy and Weymouth and Braintree. And of the three communities, we are at minimum 2,800% over the national average for populations. Okay? Quincy is 6,000% over, Weymouth is 3,300% over, and Braintree is 2,800% over rural. Okay? So this compressor station, with all that it brings with it, is in probably one of the most dangerous places you could possibly put it. And the corporation has lied. If their mouths are open, they're lying. All the way along. So, in terms of justice for the people of the basin, and as we've said, there's environmental justice neighborhoods in Germantown and Quincy, census tracts in East Braintree. We know that by the time we get through the 2020 census, there'll probably be sections of North Weymouth that are environmental justice areas. The people there have had enough. We commissioned this documentary, FRRACS did. We began talking in the board about telling the stories. We'd heard story after story, people coming up to us at our public meetings talking about brain cancer, which Dr. Nordgaard looked at me one day and said, "You know, Alice, that's really kind of rare." I said, "Not in North Weymouth, not in Quincy, not in Braintree. We hear way, way too much of it." People come up talking to us about diseases like idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. I've never heard of this. 4 cases in 100,000. We got 4 cases in Quincy in a population of less than 6,000. This isn't just fantasy, and then they want to put another facility on top of it that is going to produce benzene, toluene, formaldehyde, 1,3-butadiene, all carcinogenic, every single one of them. And the DEP and the MAPC and the DPH said, "Move along, we don't see a problem." I would like to thank Regina, Brita, and all the doctors from the Greater Boston Physicians for Social Responsibility for the multiple reports that they have written. They refuted the health impact assessment. They wrote a risk assessment profile of the area. And I know I'm missing probably 2 other papers that they have written for us to tell the powers that be, we've got a problem here. We have a public health emergency. The Department of Environmental Protection should be criminally prosecuted.
Yes.
We're working on that. So we have gone forward. FRRACS has brought in so many people, so many members, so many allies, all of you in this room, to say that this is ground zero, because we are the frontline community. If we stop it here, it doesn't go to Nova Scotia. If we stop it here, we set a precedent for the industry. We set a precedent for their financiers. They are terrified of this because then they'll be the pariah at the cocktail parties. And if we can set this precedent here, when we stop this compressor station, it will send shockwaves through their industry. A ragtag bunch of citizens, the municipalities of Weymouth and Braintree, Quincy, Hingham, and beyond have stopped the largest pipeline company in North America. So Keep fighting. We hope you can join us next Tuesday, and thank you all for being with us, for walking this road with us, and for all of your actions. Thank you.
This is a group of all-stars right here. We're going to switch gears now, but before we do that, we're going to have questions and answers of the panel. Before we do that, I'd like to do two things. One is to, if anybody has to leave, there's a basket for donations. This event is free, but we do like to have donations to pay for the costs of actually having space in this building and various other things. And secondly, next Tuesday, unfortunately, I hope it doesn't conflict with what Alice just said, there will be a nonviolent civil disobedience training at the Baptist Church, the First Baptist Church down Center Street. David is going to hand around a clipboard right now, and if you're interested in getting the training, and then at some point that might lead to you meeting Alice down in Fore River, and that will happen next Tuesday. David, what time? 7 o'clock. So next Tuesday for those who are interested in the training for nonviolent civil disobedience. One last thing I wanted to do, a couple of people have mentioned, and actually Alice's organization is called FRRACS, and it's very appropriate name because this gas is from fracking. It comes from the Marcellus Shale states, which is to say Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, where there's underground deposits of oil and gas that are now brought up through what's called an unconventional method of horizontal fracturing of the geologic level, so that the gas that's there that was otherwise not able to be recovered comes up, and it comes up with water. Kerry mentioned that the water that's brought up is also radioactive, and so that is called brine. That's part of the process of fracking. Some of you have just come from a meeting at BU where investigative journalists described this process of getting, I think it's called production water up from the fracking sites, putting it in tanks, and it's radioactive, and that's because it is salty. It can be used as a de-icing solution, and it's spread on roads. So that's another aspect of this, that the fracking process gets the gas out through this unconventional and very dangerous and hazardous method. And it's piped through pipelines up to Weymouth. It will actually go out into the Boston Harbor and then further up to Salem, and then beyond that up through Maine and up through New Hampshire and Maine. I'm glad to hear you're a Maine native. So am I. So we'll have to talk. So I think actually the customers for this gas in Maine and New Hampshire have pulled out. The biggest remaining customer is Irving Oil up in New Brunswick, and then what they don't buy will go on up to Nova Scotia. So that's a little bit more about what this gas is that is supposed to be pumped through this compressor station. So with that, let's have Q&A. Yep.
I'd like to ask Nathan Phillips, who did the hunger strike, to get them to clean up the dirt around the station, what the results were, whether Charlie Baker budged, and how are you?
Thank you. So I'm feeling back to normal, and I was very fortunate and privileged to be able to do that, to be a vehicle for that spotlight. So yeah, thank you. The overall objective was to intensify the spotlight, and I think that has ratcheted the awareness forward, because like friends of friends are talking about it now that had no idea what the Weymouth compressor was about. So I feel like that has moved the issue to a higher level of awareness. In terms of what the Baker administration has done, almost nothing. In fact, things were already in play because of the work of FRRACS pushing, including Margaret Bellafiore, who was able to get onto Boston Public Radio 2 times and get Baker to commit. She basically cornered him into saying, all right, we'll do this, which is the air monitor, as well as some testing for asbestos at depth, but they barely moved on those. So we need to just keep the relentless pressure on them. So just keep going.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a quick question. Sure. I
I'll
have
repeat
a,
it.
yeah, I have a quick question for Alice and Indigenous woman. Would you please give a brief overview of what they've referred to so often as the toxic legacy, and tell us a bit about that? Like, who is out there? What are the toxins that are now in place that are already polluting the area? So that we have a little more grounding about what this actually is and what that spot is holding.
Everybody hear that question? What are the toxins that are still there in the neighborhoods? And Alice and Carrie.
So, the site itself, there were sort of 3 iterations of the peninsula. So we go back to 1898 where we have a map that the peninsula literally does not exist. It's water. What happened over the years was the Edgar coal-fired plant came in, and there were other industries that came in, and they literally created the peninsula out of industrial waste. So the Edgar coal-fired plant dumped coal ash, what we call burner bricks or furnace bricks, which contain the asbestos, and clinkers, which is the coal burned down to its final source. It can't go any further. And so that whole peninsula, even though you saw it and it looked kind of lovely, is actually industrial waste. And then in the 80s and 90s, there was an 11 million gallon diesel fuel tank, number 2 diesel. And there was a 6 million gallon diesel additive tank on that same site. The diesel tank, I don't know about the additive tank, but the diesel tank had no bottom. No bottom. The bottom of the diesel tank was comprised of clay. So it was leaching down into the soil for 25 plus years or so. And also, and this is what I love this about the DEP, because I'm going to stand up, but they're just like, I just sit there and say, why do you people exist? There is no chain of custody documentation when they took down that oil tank. The however many million gallons were in that tank before they took it down, there is supposed to be a chain of custody that said, well, Clean Harbors came and took off 1 million gallons, and Joe's Oil came off and took off 1 million gallons. Whatever, there need to be manifests and chain of custody as to where that oil went. There are none.
Yeah.
And even Enbridge, who was trying to, do some paperwork to that end, stated that they could not get the chain of custody paperwork on this oil. And so therefore, underneath about 10 feet down is what is called L-Namble, which is sort of ancient petroleums that are down there. We contend there's at least 11 million gallons down there. And they say it's like peanut butter. It's so thick because of the saltwater environment. So what you have for contamination is you have arsenic, mercury, lead, cadmium, all of the things that you'll find in the clinkers and the coal ash. Oh, I forgot something. And then before the oil tanks were there was a consistent pile of 300,000 tons of coal. And that you saw, there was a picture of the coal plant, and there was this sort of shaft that went up to the coal plant. That was the coal elevator that went from one side of 3A to the other and took the coal up there. And that sat there, that huge pile of coal sat there for 50 years. So all of the ash, all of the toxins, all of that are there, plus the asbestos. And the asbestos would come from the furnace brick, the broken furnace brick, and also the piping of the Edgar plant and the seals on the furnaces were all asbestos at the time. They used to just take it and dump it. And there were no regulations, literally no regulations. So it's extremely toxic, and so when the company first came in and said, okay, well, this is what we're gonna do, they said, don't touch it. Leave it alone. So we had this public involvement plan meeting, and I stood up and said, I just wanna mention something. I said, you're telling us not to touch it, and the woman said, right. And she said, don't even step on that property behind the fence. I said, okay. I said, you people are digging down 7 feet to put your gas pipes in there. What part of don't touch it do you not understand? So they got non-compliance, they had to go back on all of that, but, and we're going forward with this contamination situation. But since they've been digging, we've had anyone who goes down there, sore throats, headaches. I actually get sort of like a lung pain after being down there for about a half an hour. And some of the smells are just like, you have no idea what it is you're smelling. Probably petroleum type distillates that are coming up from the deep pits that they're digging. So it's really, really contaminated. But what was happening was Mother Nature had been taking it over. So within that fence last summer, trees, salt, marsh grasses, wild sweet pea, a ton of wild sweet pea, monarch butterflies, dragonflies, bunnies. Okay, Mother Nature was just caring for it and saying, listen, just leave us alone, we're gonna take care of us. Not anymore. That was a mess.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing on the way there? I guess I just want to underscore the point I made about FRRACS just kind of not piercing through, because, there are soil borings that show highly elevated levels of arsenic, lead, mercury. The data are there, and they have not been regarded.
So, to answer your question, it hasn't reached Nova Scotia yet. This is why this fight down here in Weymouth is so dire to get this stopped so that it doesn't reach that point of up there. Because the river that it's going to cross, A, is a freshwater river, B, is home to the wild. There's a lot of wildlife species that still live in and around this river. My people still fish off of this river. This river is where I learned to cast my first rod. This is how far back it goes. So it hasn't reached up there yet, which is why I took on the fight that I did down here, because I'm, like I said, no position to drive 16 hours away to fight it. So when I started putting these dots together and I started realizing that these guys were holding Charlie Baker up down here. By holding Charlie Baker up down here, I was noticing up there that their construction was coming to a stop almost. It was, okay, get off the land, but we're still gonna keep it open because, well, we have faith that this governor down in Massachusetts is gonna push this through. And that's exactly what he did. He pushed it through. That's when it became personal for me. That's when I decided at that point in time, I'm gonna be a thorn in Charlie Baker's side. And I already gave Charlie Baker that happy little tweet. I let him know, I'm here, I'm gonna fight for my people up there. To stop it. It has no reason to reach Nova Scotia. It has no reason to be built in the first place, let alone reach places. But as long as my people and my reservation in a place that I used to call home, in both aspects, down here and up there, are at stake, then yeah, you can probably find me locked down to more machinery again. Because for those who didn't know, I was one of the ones that was locked down.
Can you comment what you said, Dick, which I think that lot of us fail to appreciate the incredible expansion of the hydraulic fracturing industry in the United States, and we're talking a lot about the health concerns here, but I think that it is increasingly clear that there are also health concerns for people who live in the hydraulic fracturing sites in Pennsylvania and Colorado. There are probably a dozen well-drafted and reviewed medical studies that show pregnancy outcomes, adverse pregnancy outcomes, all-cause hospitalization, respiratory diseases are associated with living near the extraction sites as well. And so this industry has progressed rampantly, and we're only now playing catch-up with the health impacts in Pennsylvania, Colorado, and other places too.
Andrea?
I wanted to point out, I'm from Weymouth. I wanted to point out when we saw the backhoes moving that really dark black earth, that was the coal waste, basically. All that was out in the open, which is against the plan that they're supposed to be following. None of the workers were wearing any kind of protection. None of our police department was wearing any kind of breathing protection because TRC, who happened to write the resource reports, TRC out of Lowell, they wrote the resource reports that were sent to FERC on behalf of Spectra, which was filled with lies, which got everything approved, FERC approves everything. TRC was the one that said, don't touch that land. Oh, but touch it all over the place. It's only historic fill. What's the big deal? And they're also the ones that said, well, it's all right, you know, and the DP's like, fine, great. Don't have to wear protection. No lung protection. So these workers and the police department are breathing that in, just completely raw arsenic, not to mention the arsenic, right? But the asbestos. And there's a study that Nathan found, that I found separately, and then we realized it was the same thing. There was a study in Pennsylvania on a coal ash like dumping ground, kind of like the North Parcel is. And they found that asbestos in acidic environments will migrate off. So like you don't even have to see a brick in order for that asbestos, it's in the soil, it migrates off in acidic environments, and arsenic's acidic. So like, it's everywhere. And that's part of the reason, one of the main reasons why Nathan was having the hunger strike, because huge public, like, wouldn't you want to know if asbestos was floating around in your neighborhood, flying everywhere? They used a dry street sweeper as the trucks were going in and out, picking up all that toxic stuff, which, mark my words, the people who are random trucks picking stuff up and taking it to New Hampshire, they had no idea truly what was in that. And so when they're cleaning out their trucks later, they're going to get lungfuls of asbestos, right? So it's not only the compressor is a horrible thing. It's a nasty, horrible thing. It's unneeded. National Grid, Eversource have already said they don't need it to service Massachusetts. Like, there's no reason on earth for this thing, much less, the environmental parts of it. But you've got this immediate, to me, and everybody else that, we're around there, immediate public health emergency, because they're going to do some more digging, like the big digging with that black earth, which is not really earth, I'm just calling it that. That's over right now, but they're going to do some more digging. The DEP has refused to test. They've refused to test any further. They tested from the surface to 12 inches below the surface, and we have pictures because people are there almost all the time. There's somebody in this audience who's there almost all the time, and taking videos and taking pictures, and you can see that there's topsoil, right? Because it should have been a Superfund site. All those years ago, like, it was never made a Superfund site. It was, it's a brown field, whatever, what's the big deal? You've got some topsoil, but then under that, they've been digging up to 5, 6, 7 feet deep. They haven't tested down there. And pre-1972 burner bricks, they're going to be down lower, and they're digging down lower. They refuse to test for it. So you've got, it's invisible, nobody can see it, and you've got these people who are going to be 10, 20 years later showing up with symptoms of whatever, from breathing in the coal ash, breathing in the asbestos. I even called one of the guys the all-green hydro seed. We saw that on, if you're on Twitter, follow Elf on Site. That's a conglomeration of different people. We post things about the site, like what's going on at the site. So we saw this truck that said all green hydro seed. And that just got me in the gut. I was like, oh shit. I looked them up. It's a truck out of Connecticut, so they hire random people to come pick this stuff up and take it to New Hampshire. By the way, New Hampshire doesn't know there's asbestos in there. Nobody's tested for it, right? New Hampshire is accepting toxic waste at the turnkey waste management site. They don't know what's in there. They have no idea, right? So you've got those people. You can see how widespread this is. I called the guy, I left a message at All Green Hydro Seed. I'm like, I'm not gonna give you crap for taking this job, but I want you to know what's in the soil. Or it's not even soil, because I'm afraid that TRC and DEP, they're lying to you, they're not telling you what's happened, what you're actually picking up. And he's like, oh, he texted me back. He's like, I know, thank you he was very nice, was appreciative. I said, but I don't think you know. You really don't know. And this, and this, and this, and please, hazmat, everything, head to toe, because it just horrified me. But it's just part and parcel of what this whole industry and the people that service the fossil fuel industry do. Like we heard with Justin Noble, the Rolling Stone investigative reporter, about the radioactivity. And, the unions, the workers have no unions, they're cleaning out this brine stuff, and they're getting exposed to everything, and there's just nobody cares. Nobody knows, nobody cares, it's so convoluted. I find this asbestos and this existing, like this coal industrial waste dump to be very straightforward. And Baker wants nothing to do with it. He is the boss of this. He's the boss of all of this. And it is because he wants it that it's happening. Nobody else wants this. He has not been made to feel the pain of this. I got pretty emotional. I've seen parts of this documentary before. I got pretty emotional. I had to go in the restroom, and Lisa helped me. I was just like this because I didn't know what a compressor was 3.5 years ago. The things that I know now and the lack of recourse and due process, this happens to Weymouth. This will happen to you because as long as Charlie Baker is governor, because any facility that's bad for you or something you want to keep away from your family, he's just gonna grease through a goose, no problem, put it in. So it's not just us, it's not just gas, it's everybody in Massachusetts. And as we know, there are 7 or 8 other gas projects, modernization, which means bigger, more pressure, bigger things, add a compressor there, add a this there, Agawam, Charlton, all of that stuff. Like it's going on all across Massachusetts. Yeah, I know, right? Talk to them. Sorry, thank you. Talk to them. I'm in a little longer.
You got a few more questions in that? Yep.
I have a very tactical question. Thank you, and I'm sorry, your name again? Andrea just mentioned Charlie Baker. I want to understand the power analysis of how, if it's Baker, how it is that he has the power, because I remember with West Roxbury, FERC just kind of goes above and beyond any due process of elected officials. So I want to understand who has the power to actually stop it at this point, given how far it is, and whoever that is, what's the analysis of what will actually stop them? Is it bodies? Is it some other behind the scenes? Can give us the sense of who's in power.
Okay,
and then how we tap in.
Good question.
So, right now, what they're doing is sort of pre-construction. They're, supposedly cleaning things up, which is obviously impossible. So that's sort of where we're at right now. So, if the goal is to stop it, what is going to be the answer there? So we've got several different levels here. The nonviolent direct action that Carrie was involved in, that Nathan has been involved in, that many people have been involved in, that FRRACS has been working with. The goal of that is to slow them down, okay? It will not stop them from doing what they're doing. It would be basically impossible for us to have hundreds of people on site every day getting arrested, that kind of thing. And so the nonviolent direct action piece of it is to slow them down, because for every time that we've been arrested, Lisa, we have shut them down for the day. They've basically been so discombobulated, they just shut down for the day. So that has bought us, say, 4 work days at this point. So every time we do this, we shut them down for the day. So that's the goal. The secondary goal of that is media attention and more pressure on Mr. Baker. Can we shut it down legally? Are we going to be able to get some kind of a stop work order? So I'll give you a little information that we haven't put out there yet. I'm going to try to get the email out tonight. We do have a court date for our oral arguments on the air quality permit. That court date, this is fun, is going to be on Maundy Thursday, April 9th. It will be in Portland, Maine. Okay, now I talked to our attorney and I said, all right, Mike, what's this all about? And he said, okay, he said, historically speaking, it's called a circuit court because you have courts in Boston and Maine and New Hampshire. And in the old days, the judge would ride his horse around the circuit and visit each court on a certain day. So that's why it's called a circuit court. So it's kind of the luck of the draw. FRRACS and the town of Weymouth, the town of Braintree, and the town of Hingham, and the city of Quincy is enjoined with FRRACS, had asked for a short court date. We were hoping to get February, we were hoping to get March, so we ended up getting April 9th. So we'll take it. He said the other thing that could have been is that Enbridge exerted pressure somehow on the court to get it taken out of Boston because of all of us. And I said, oh, they've never heard of carpooling. So, so once we get sort of the time and the court location and all of that kind of thing, we'll let people know. We would like to have the courthouse packed. You do need to remain respectful inside the courthouse. We're hoping to have some street theater outside. We have some allies in Maine, so we're hoping to do that. That case, okay, I don't know how many of you have heard of the Virginia case at Union Hill. There was a decision in the Fourth Circuit that said they vacated the air quality permit for a compressor station in a historically black community, Union Hill in Virginia. And they did it for 2 reasons. The first reason was they never took environmental justice into consideration. We've got the same problem. The second reason was that the operator never considered an electric turbine as opposed to a gas-powered turbine. The electric turbine would cut the emissions in half. But the companies just say, oh, it just costs us too much. Well, I got news for you. The compressor station in Weymouth was a $70 million project. We've cost them $40 million. A little ancillary thing to that is in the DPU docket, FRRACS became a limited participant on National Grid's contracts. The Attorney General also is an intervener on that, and she recently requested from the DPU the capital costing on the Weymouth compressor station because she knows they're going to try to hit all of us for the $40 million that we cost them. And she's not going to let that happen. So there could be something happening within the DPU as well. And then the final thing that I can tell you, so we have multiple court cases going. We were recently hit with a SLAP suit. So they hit FRRACS and the town of Weymouth with what is called a SLAP suit. And it's a civil action to try to get us to back off. And what they're trying to say is, well, we think you're going to file an injunction, so we're going to try to make it illegal for you to file an injunction. I went, what is this, law by minority report? You guys nuts? So we're going to file to dismiss, the town's going to file to dismiss. So obviously we've gotten under their skin that they ended up doing that. We are in the courts for the waterways permit. The town is in the courts for the wetlands permit, and we are adjoined with the town on the coastal zone management permits. We've got multiple court cases going. And then one final thing, and this is just starting to get off the ground. When the bridge was built, the brand new bridge, Spectra, now Enbridge, was legally obligated to tell the Department of Transportation where the pipeline was. They didn't do it. That's illegal. We have the paperwork that says Spectra never supplied us with the information. And then the DOT broke the law in their financial reports stating that the pipeline was nowhere near the bridge, that it was somewhere northeast of the bridge. It's 20 feet from the bridge abutments on the Weymouth side. So we have and every operator of the pipelines, they have to mark the pipelines. They have to mark where they are. They only marked them 2 years ago. They never marked them. Now, the Columbia Gas case, they were criminally prosecuted for not knowing where their pipelines were. And in New York, the Office of the Inspector General is now taking Algonquin to court on the AIM pipeline, West Roxbury, because they lied on the risk assessment of the pipeline going in front of the Indian Point nuclear power plant. So because we have Spectra lying, because we have them breaking the law on where the pipelines were supposed to go, that is being pursued now. It's just we're trying to figure out whose tree to bark up. So we're working on that as well. So it's multiple layers of how can we end this. But if we can get traction on that last piece, we will file an injunction.
I think we have to agree. Agree that Alice's Henry is worse than
Yes.
What an amazing panel this was. What an amazing, I'm calling this Super Wednesday we just had. And I think we have to get out of here. I'm sorry. We're supposed to wrap up and then clean up this place. Andrea has one last comment.
Just real quick, you would ask about Charlie Baker and what was his power to stop this? The coastal zone management, had he instructed, even privately, the coastal zone management, which was the last permit to be given, to not do it, because it breaks all of their policies, right, and regulations, FERC would have had to take a walk. So it was always in his power to stop this, always. And he did not. All permits have been granted.
Does he now currently have the power to stop it?
Yes.
Too late. He does.
Yep,
Okay.
as
All
Alice
right. On that note, let's get on with it.
says. Sorry, thank you. I have buttons if anybody wants buttons.